Okay. All right. Welcome back to another Shabbat. We're going to talk about what is a prophet and what is a prophetess. So I think everybody knows what a prophet is. I guess people have a general definition. Someone who speaks on behalf of the higher power or a divine messenger. Someone who can tell the future. Someone can tell has very perceptive skills to know things about you that only you know. I think a lot of people have heard of people claiming to be prophets or be able to have the spiritual gift of prophecy. And a prophetess is also a female prophet. And also it has other definitions as well. We're going to get into that too. But that's kind of a general what I hear people say when they hear about prophet. But we're going to go into what the Bible says, what is a prophet and what is a false prophet. And then just a disclaimer, me personally, I don't think that we're in the age of prophets today. I think the last prophet that we had was John, who wrote the book of Revelation. I believe that was the end of prophecy because that was the end of the book. And prophecy or prophets won't come back until the Most High sends his son back. And that's when prophecy will be brought again on this earth. But that's just my personal disclaimer. So, if it goes against someone's beliefs, that's just my personal belief from what the scriptures, what I've learned from the scriptures. So that's just something I want to say. All right. So let's get into it. Let's talk about what is a prophet and a prophetess. So let's go to the first part of the Bible where prophet is actually mentioned. All right. Oh, sorry. All right. So this is Genesis chapter 20. It's about Abraham. Abraham's treachery. Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur. Oh. Hey, peace. We just started. We just going into what is prophecy. I'm sorry. What is a prophet and what is a prophetess? We just started. All right. So we in Genesis chapter 20. All right. And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur and sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. So he was traveling like, it's like what they would say ancient Egypt, or what we would call modern day Saudi Arabia. So he was around that area. And so Abraham said that, Sarah, his wife, she is my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, behold, thou art but a dead man, for the woman which thou hast taken, for she is a man's wife. But Abimelech had not come near her. And he said, Lord, wilt thou slay also a righteous nation? Said he not unto me, she is my sister. And she herself said, he is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands have I done this. And God said unto him in a dream, yea, I know that thou did this in the integrity of thy heart, for I also withheld thee from sinning against me. Therefore suffered I thee not to touch her. Now therefore restore the man his wife, for he is a prophet, and he shall pray for you, and thou shalt live. And if thou restore her not, know thou that thou shalt surely die, thou and all that are thine. So he said, if you sleep with this man's wife, who is a prophet, you're going to die, and everybody who's associated with you is going to die. Verse 8, therefore Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told all these things in their ears, and the men were sore afraid. And the rest of the story, he gave Sarah back to Abraham. But that is a very weighty declaration that the Most High said, if you touch this man's wife, you're going to die, straight up. And, that's just the power that a prophet has. He has this divine protection over him and his loved ones. So it's like you can't touch them or you can't mess with them without having some serious repercussions, right? So we're going to get into what is a prophet, the definition though. What is that word that they say right there? Prophet. In the Hebrew, they call it Navi. The B is kind of pronounced like a V, Navi. And then also prophetess. You see prophetess the first time in Exodus chapter 15, whenever it goes about refers to Miriam, who was the sister of Aaron and Moses. And she was a prophetess with her music. She was a singer. So she used to prophesize in her songs. And you read about that in, I think, Exodus 15 as well. All right, but let's keep going. So this is the definition, Navi. It says translated as prophet 312 times. Also spokesman, speaker, prophet, false prophet, heathen prophet. Navi from H50112, a prophet or generally inspired man. Prophecy, a prophet, right? All right, so this inspired man, we're going to get into that. Also, this is prophetess. It's a Navia. And this is translated as prophetess 6 times in the Bible. Prophetess, an ancient type endowed with gift of song, like Miriam. Later type consulted for a word Huldah. Huldah was also a prophetess in the book of Kings. And a false prophetess who was Noadiah. Oh, that's interesting. False prophetess. So there's false prophets and false prophetesses. We're going to read about Noadiah as well. And also wife of Isaiah the prophet. So you can also be a prophetess because you're married to a prophet. That's interesting, huh? So a prophetess or generally inspired woman, by implication, a poetess, by association, a prophet's wife. So they call it a poetess, or, you know, what they would call a psalmist, someone who wrote songs, who wrote music, because music has always been a spiritual endeavor, writing songs, playing instruments, because of how it can uplift someone's mood. It can bring someone's mood. You know how you are when, if you feel sometimes sad, you listen to sad music, you get even more sadder. Or sometimes when you're sad, you listen to some upbeat music, like listen to like some Michael Jackson or something, you start wanting to dance, you start, you know, your mood starts to change. That's the power of music, you know. So that's why it's always been known that if someone's able to write music or write songs of suggestion to you, they can kind of influence your behavior without you even knowing. That's why a lot of the music artists today, they're seen as almost like a prophet or a prophetess, or what I would call more of a witch or a sorcerer, because they are able to bring up things inside you that you're not even aware of. That's why you have to be careful what you take in, your eyes, your ears, you know, your stomach, things like that. Is we live in this country, especially America, is based off witchcraft. It's based off masonry. You know, all the founding fathers were Masons. You know, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, allegedly, but that's pretty well documented. All right. A prophet was an inspired person, because so can you be inspired in a good way and also inspired in a bad way? Yes, you can. Let's read about it. So this is Isaiah chapter 46, verse 1. You probably read this before about Bel and Nebo. It says, Bel boweth down, Nebo stoopeth. Their idols were upon the beast and upon the cattle. Your carriages were heavily laden. They are a burden to the weary beasts. Now, Isaiah, he's prophesying about the destruction of Babylon. And Bel was a Babylonian god, quote unquote God, that they worship. And it was one of the gods that they saw as one of their more powerful gods. You actually read about some of that in Daniel. Daniel was named after this god. Like, I think his name, when he got to Babylon, they changed it to Belshazzar. A lot of them, they used to name themselves after the gods of Babylon, to kind of show a type of worship or veneration to them. Same with Nebo. Nebo was King Nebuchadnezzar. He was named after Nebo. He was also a Babylonian god. But let's go into that word Nebo. Nebo, translated 13 times, actually means prophet in the Babylonian. And you saw how it's very similar to the word in Hebrew, Nevi, because Babylonian, or what we would call in modern day historical terms, Akkadian, is a Semitic language, and the Semitic languages are Babylonian or Akkadian, Hebrew, Arabic. What else? Assyrian, Aramaic. Those are Semitic languages, and so the most common Semitic languages are Hebrew and Arabic. That's because people don't really speak the other ones. But Babylonian or the Akkadian, they use Nebo as a prophet. And you see the definition of that Babylonian deity who presided over learning and letters corresponds to Greek Hermes, Latin Mercury, Egyptian Thoth. So they're all talking about the same person. And that person is Hermes, Mercury, and Thoth, or Nebo in Babylonian, and what the Bible calls Cush. So this is all talking about that man Cush, who was the father of Nimrod, who was the son of Ham. And Cush, he was the person that was able to interpret the languages after the fall, after the Tower of Babel. That's how Cush and Nimrod, their supremacy was so dominant, because they were able to unify man, even with the scattering of the languages. They were able to still have a big ruling. So in different parts, he was called different names. So in Egypt, he was called Thoth, and in Italy, he was called Mercury, and the Greek islands, he was called Hermes, and things like that. And so that's just some of the history about the prophet or the false prophet. Nebo is the false prophet, or at least one of them. Let's keep going. Now let's read about more false prophet, false prophetess. So this is Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 10. We're going to read about Noadiah. So afterward, Nehemiah was a man after the captivity of the Israelites in Babylon. They were taken over by the Persians, and the Persians allowed many of the Israelites to go back into their homeland to rebuild Jerusalem. So Nehemiah and Ezra, they were the top commanders at that time. I think Ezra was actually a priest, but Nehemiah was a military man who was actually able to be part of the leadership of that time. So Nehemiah is starting to rebuild the temple, but people are trying to stop him. So verse 10, chapter 6, afterward, I came into the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, the son of Mehetabeel, who was shut up. And he said, let us meet together in the house of God within the temple, and let us shut the doors of the temple, for they will come to slay thee. Yea, in the night they will come to slay thee. So Nehemiah, he's trying to go to the house of the Lord, temple that they just been trying to rebuild. But he's saying that we need to close it down, because they're going to come and kill you. And verse 11, I said, should such a man as I flee? He said, why should I run away? And who is there that, being as I am, will go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in. And lo, I perceived that God had not sent him, but that he pronounced this prophecy against me. For Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. And these were men that were trying to stop the rebuild of the temple, or Jerusalem in general. Verse 13, therefore was he hired, that I should be afraid and to do so in sin, and that they might have matter of an evil report, that they might reproach me. So Nehemiah, he perceived that this was a false prophet, or as a false warning, prophecy to go into the house of the Lord. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, he wanted to go to the house, to the temple, but Nehemiah, he's like, it's not the right time to do that right now. And so he was trying to trick Nehemiah into doing that. And so verse 14, he said, my God, now he's praying, my God, think upon Tobiah and Sanballat according to these their works, and on the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets that would have put me in fear. So he also he's recognizing that a prophet or prophetess, they're able to give sometimes people false reports to change their actions. So sometimes people will say things that are not from God, but they say things to try to convince you that they're from God, so that you will do something that they want you to do. So that's why people sometimes have agendas, and you have to raise your perception. You have to raise your discernment to know, is this coming from the Most High? Is this coming from someone else? or even their own imagination, you know. So that's why we have to always kind of keep our spiritual awareness up, guarded. All right, let's keep going. So the question is, how do we know if, let's say, this prophet is from the Most High, or if he's not? Or what do we do with a false prophet? So first, let's answer that. The second question first. Like, what do we do with a false prophet who tries to steer you wrong? At least what used to be done. So chapter 13 of Deuteronomy, verse 1, if there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and gives thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or the wonder come to pass, whereof he spake unto you, saying, let us go after other gods, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them, thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Most High your God proveth you, or he's testing you, to know whether you love the Most High your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Ye shall walk after the most High your God, and fear him, and keep his commandments, and obey his voice, and ye shall serve him and cleave unto him. So sometimes the Most High will actually raise up a person to give you a miracle, just to test you, to say, like, are you going to obey me, or are you going to obey this person who did this miracle in your life, just so you can worship another God? And he says sometimes he's going to prove you. He's going to try to test you to see if you choose this person who's going to offer you a convenient life, or a convenient sea, or whatever, you know, something that you really want, that makes you feel good inside, but you know that's not right. And he's like, I'm going to test you to see if you're going to choose that person, or you're going to choose me. Because that's what he said. He wants you to love him. He wants you to fear him, you know, so with all your heart, all your soul. Keep going. Verse 5, and that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he has spoken to turn you away from the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt and redeemed you out of the house of bondage, to thrust thee out of the way which the Most High thy God commanded thee to walk in. So shall thou put the evil away from the midst of thee. If thy brother, the son of thy mother, or thy son, or thy daughter, or their wife, or thy bosom, or thy friend, which is as thy own soul, like even if it's your best friend you grew up with, entice you secretly, saying, let us go and serve other gods, which thou hast not known, nor thy fathers, namely of the gods of the people which are around about us, are nigh unto you, as so or far are from thee, from the one end of the earth even to the other end of the earth. Thou shalt not consent unto him, nor hearken unto him. Neither shall thy eye pity him, neither shall thy spare, neither shall thou conceal him. So you don't listen to him. And he said, don't pity him, don't spare him. He said, don't even try to hide him. And he said, but thou shalt surely kill him. Thou shalt be first upon him to put him to death, and afterward the hand of all thy people. So he's like, you know, you can't condone this criminality. Like, you know, in our so-called community, we have a saying, we say no snitching. You know, it's like that's actually part of the detriment of our community, is that we don't call out criminality and you know, just wrong things and going on in our neighborhoods. But he was like, you know, that's not a policy in regards to a false prophet, because if you let this person slide, he's going to influence the rest of your people, and it's going to corrupt your people. And I say that because in verse 10 it says, thou shalt stone him with stones, that he die, because he has sought to thrust thee away from the Lord thy God, which brought thee out of the land of Egypt, from the house of bondage. And all Israel shall hear and fear, and shall do no more any such wickedness as this is among you. So, you know, so this is what it was done. Now, of course, you know, we don't just stone people, we don't kill people. And Nehemiah, he didn't do that either, because, you know, even though he was in the land, he was rebuilding the temple, he understands that the enforcement of biblical law is only when you have that power over the land. And, you know, Nehemiah, even though he was a strong man, he was able to regain a lot of that prominence back into the country. You can't enforce this type of stuff when you don't have the government, the legislation, and things like that. That's why it's like, we have to read the Bible in proper context. When we're in certain like aspects of captivity, or we're not in a place of where we are enforcing our law, we have to read the Bible in context. We can't just be super radical and super zealous to do things that, it's not the time and the place to do it. As the Bible says, there's a time and a place for everything. Right now is the time to gather information and understand knowledge and prepare our minds for the transition from when the kingdom will come, when biblical law will be enforced. But right now we're still learning. We're still in the process of just preserving ourselves for that incoming judgment on this earth. All right. So how do we know when a prophet is sent from God? So we just saw a false prophet, but how do we know when a prophet is really sent from God? How do we know? Same thing in Deuteronomy 18. Then I'm going to start at verse 18. I will raise them up a prophet from among their brethren, like unto thee, and will put my words in his mouth. He shall speak unto them all that I have commanded him. And it shall come to pass that whosoever will not hearken unto my words, which he shall speak in my name, I will require it of him. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. And if thou say in thy heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord has not spoken? When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, or name of the Most High, if the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord has not spoken, but the prophet has spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him. So he's like, if a prophet says something like in the year 2022 that, something's going to happen and it doesn't happen, that's not from God. That's a false prophet. A lot of people like to make predictions, but they going off their own imaginations. They're speaking presumptuously. They have feelings. They're going off their feelings. They're going off, I had a dream. And he's like, you don't need to be afraid of people who speak presumptuously. You need to be afraid of people who speak from the word of the Lord, which we have the scriptures. But, like I said, I said this earlier, we don't have prophets of today. We have people with a high level of insight who can understand things. They can perceive things, but we don't have people that are able to predict the future, especially the end judgment day and things like that. When the Messiah is coming back, we don't have that ability. So anybody who says that they're speaking presumptuously, they're speaking out of their own vain philosophies in their mind. No disrespect. All right. So then it's Matthew 10:40. He that receive you, receive me. He that receives me, receives him that sent me. This is the Messiah talking to his disciples about sending them out to, to do the miracles. And he says 10:41, he that receives a prophet in the name of a prophet shall receive a prophet's reward. He that receives a righteous man in the name of a righteous man shall receive a righteous man reward. And whosoever shall give to drink unto one of these little ones a cup of cold water only in the name of a disciple, verily I say unto you, he shall in no wise lose his reward. So there are blessings that come with when you know a prophet, or you see a prophet, or you see a righteous person, a righteous man, righteous woman, or you see someone who speaks in the name of the Messiah, his disciple. If you do good for him, you're going to be counted with a gift. And sometimes that gift will come later down in life, but you will be counted or regarded as someone who took pity on some of the Most High's people, chosen people, especially someone who's actually doing what, he was called. So, there's levels to that reward, and especially being a prophet. Same way there's levels of disobedience for hurting a prophet, like in regards to Abraham and his wife. If he, like I said, the Most High spoke to that man in that dream, said, if you touch this man's wife, you're going to die in your whole household, because he was going to transgress against a prophet. So, transgression against a prophet is almost like transgressing against the Most High. It's almost like having the Most High in the flesh, in a sense of regard. because of how anointed this person is. This person is speaking the words that come from the Most High. So, you want to treat these people with high respect. All right. And the last thing, this is just the lexicon, just to kind of give us some more context about the word prophet. And as we see, Arabic, Syriac, these are just languages of Semitic languages that kind of help us understand more about what a prophet meant, especially in a historical context. So it says a prophet who, as actuated by a divine afflatus or spirit, either rebuked the conduct of kings and nations or predicted future events. See that in Deuteronomy 13, Judge 6, 1 Samuel 9, 1 Kings 22, 2 Kings 3, 2 Chronicles 28. With the idea of a prophet, there was this necessarily attached that he spoke not his own words, but those which he had divinely received, and that he was the messenger of God and the declarer of his will. This is clear from a passage of peculiar authority in this matter in Exodus 7:1, where God says to Moses, I have constituted thee as God to Pharaoh, and Aaron thy brother shall be thy prophet, i.e., in intercourse with Pharaoh, thou as being the wiser and the one with whom God communicated directly. Shall act as if it were the part of God and suggest words to thy brother, and thy brother, who is more fluent of speech, shall declare as a prophet what he receives from thee and you. In the same sense, there is said in Exodus 4:16, he shall be to thee for a mouth. So he's like, that was the job of Aaron. Aaron was a prophet to Moses, as Moses was a prophet to God or to the Most High, but he was seen as almost as God to Pharaoh. So Moses was acting as the mouthpiece for the Most High. And since Moses wasn't the most eloquent of speech or fluent of speech, Aaron was his prophet. He was his messenger. So that's why Aaron was held in such high esteem, even though he was a flawed man as well, as we see with the golden calf. But he was able to, be forgiven for that transgression because of who he represented. But Moses and Aaron, they worked, together in regards to what they were called to do. And also Aaron was the high priest as well. So, he had to fulfill a certain role before he actually passed. So, but farther, there was also among the people of Israel false prophets who pretended to be divinely inspired, pleased the ears of the people with soft words, and were therefore severely rebuked by the true prophets. You see that in Isaiah 28, Jeremiah 14, Jeremiah 27, Jeremiah 28. And also there were soothsayers who prophesied in the name of Baal, who was the Canaanite god, horn god, and Ashtaroth, who was the Canaanite goddess or the mother goddess of Canaan. 1 Kings 18, 2 Kings 10, and 1 Kings 18. Even these are called in simply Hosea 4, chapter 9, verse 7, 8, and Isaiah 3 and 2. The idea of a prophet is sometimes morally widely extended and is applied to anyone admitted to familiar intercourse with God, to whom God made known his will in Genesis 27, to the patriarchs, Psalm 105. So we see that the prophets, they were the people who made known his will. So we see that in regards to Abraham. That's why Abraham was called a prophet. Same with Isaac and Jacob. They were prophets. Same with the the prophets in the quote unquote Old Testament, like Isaiah and Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, etc. So they were the ones who were speaking on behalf of the Most High. They were prophesying about future events, but they were also the ones who were establishing what the Most High wanted for his people in regards to the forefathers, the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and eventually his 12 sons. So they were considered prophets of those days because of who they represented. Yeah. So that's what a prophet is. One thing, a prophet, they're held to a high standard, as we've read already. So You know, if these prophets, they, you know, they made, sometimes they not necessarily not make mistakes as human beings, but they weren't able to give off false reports. So if a prophet spoke things out of his own words, instead of the Most High's words, he would have really been put to death, or he would have been removed, because the people would have put him to death. So that's why it's like a prophet had a heavy burden, and you know, we didn't get into this, but that's why it's like people like Jeremiah, people like Amos, people like Jonah, they were very reluctant to be the prophet, because they understood the burden and the weight that it carried. So, you know, a lot of the people in the scriptures, they didn't necessarily want to be prophets, or because they knew, you know, it was going to they were going to have to deal with some things that they didn't really want to deal with. You know, so that's why it's like in the last days, the Most High is going to he's going to raise up prophets and prophetesses, but they're going to be his people that he chooses, that, you know, they're not really going to have a say so, and if they want to do it or not, they're going to be forced to do it. You know, so it's like the people who are now calling themselves prophets, you may see them like in local churches, or, you know, assemblies and organizations and stuff like that. They're not called by the Most High, because the Most High hasn't called anybody to be a prophet at this time period. At least what I get from the scriptures. But, you know, I think if someone calls themselves a prophet, I mean, that's their business, but I wouldn't take what they saying seriously. And honestly, I probably wouldn't listen to them, because they speaking from their own imagination of things, you know. And especially they trick the people, because they get people to, you know, especially if something that they say comes to pass or comes true, then, you know, they make them think that they have some divine oracle spirit or something like that. And, you know, some people, they do have spirits, but that's not the spirit that you think. That's, you know, demons are spirit. People have demons on them that give them a certain level of perception. So you got to be careful. But, you know, like I said, that's why you got to keep the scriptures with you, because that is this discernment that help you understand right and wrong, and, you know, what's real and not. So, all right, that's all I got. Hope it didn't take too long. All right, peace.